The night was young, and the city was alive with vibrant energy. Music poured out from the hottest club in town, where the latest party theme had turned an ordinary night into an extraordinary circus spectacle. Bright colors, laughter, and a touch of mischief filled the air. This was not your average birthday party. It was a circus-themed extravaganza for my friend Jennifer, who always knew how to throw the best parties. I had to admit, the atmosphere was infectious. People dressed in flamboyant costumes, from lion tamers to trapeze artists, mingled and danced under the flashing lights. I had chosen a sleek, sequined outfit that sparkled as I moved, fitting right into the glittering chaos around me. Jennifer, the birthday girl, was the star of the show, dressed as a glamorous ringmaster, her laughter echoing through the club. As the night wore on, I decided it was time to head home. It had been a fun evening, but I was ready to leave the crowd behind and enjoy the quiet of my apartment. I hugged Jennifer goodbye, promising to call her the next day, and made my way to the exit. The cool night air was a welcoming change from the heat and noise inside the club. The street outside was relatively quiet, the partygoers either inside the club or dispersed to other parts of the city. I felt a sense of relief as I walked towards my car, parked just a few blocks away. The streets were dimly lit, with only a few streetlights casting long shadows. I clutched my purse tightly. The sound of my heels clicking against the pavement was the only noise breaking the silence. As I approached my car, I noticed a figure standing in the shadows. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickened my pace. It wasn't uncommon to see people loitering around the club, but something about this figure felt off. As I got closer, the figure stepped into the light, revealing a clown costume. A shiver ran down my spine. The clown was out of place, even for a circus-themed party. His face was painted white with exaggerated red lips and dark eyes that seemed to follow my every move. "Hey there, looking for a ride?" he called out in a cheerful yet menacing tone. I ignored him, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached my car and fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking. The clown started to move towards me, his steps slow and deliberate. "Come on, don't be shy. It's just a bit of fun," he said, his voice now closer. I managed to unlock the car and slipped inside, locking the doors behind me. The clown was now right next to my window, tapping on the glass with his gloved fingers. His smile was wide and unsettling, his eyes cold and predatory. "Open up, let's play," he whispered, his voice barely audible through the glass. I started the car and peeled away from the curb, my tires screeching as I sped down the street. My heart was racing, my mind filled with images of the clown's sinister grin. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him running after me, but the street was empty. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. It was just a prank, I told myself. Some idiot trying to scare me. But the fear lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. As I drove through the city streets, the bright lights and bustling crowds felt like a world apart from the terror I had just experienced. I stopped at a red light, tapping my fingers nervously on the steering wheel. The intersection was quiet, only a few cars passing by. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease. Suddenly, I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head, and there he was, the clown, standing right next to my car door. I screamed, my hands fumbling to lock the doors again. The clown banged on the window, his face pressed against the glass. His eyes were wild, his smile twisted and grotesque. He tried the handle, pulling on it violently. "Let me in," he shouted, his voice filled with manic glee. The light turned green and I floored the gas pedal, speeding away. The clown's face disappeared in the rearview mirror, but his laughter seemed to echo in my ears. I drove as fast as I could, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I finally reached my apartment building, I felt a momentary sense of relief. The underground garage was empty, and I pulled into my usual spot, the sound of the garage door closing behind me a small comfort. I sat in the car for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. It was over, I told myself. The clown couldn't have followed me here. I stepped out of the car, the silence of the garage almost deafening after the chaos of the night. As I walked towards the elevator, I heard a noise behind me, a faint shuffling sound. I turned around, my heart pounding once again. There he was, the clown, standing at the entrance of the garage. His smile was gone, replaced by a look of pure malice. He started walking towards me, again, his steps slow and deliberate. I ran to the elevator, pressing the button frantically. The doors opened and I rushed inside, pressing the button for my floor. The doors started to close, but the clown was too fast. He slipped his hand between the doors, forcing them open. I backed away, looking for something, anything to defend myself. The clown stepped into the elevator, his eyes locked on mine. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung at him, missing. He jumped back, but then stepped forward again. This time, I pulled the trigger on the fire extinguisher, filling the elevator with a thick, white fog. The clown coughed and waved his hands, momentarily blinded. I took the opportunity to press the button for my floor again. The doors closed and the elevator began to rise. My heart pounded in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could hear the clown in the corner of the car, banging on the walls of the elevator, his voice muffled by the fog. With my back pressed against the corner of the opposite wall, I prayed that the elevator doors would open soon. Finally, the elevator reached my floor and the doors opened. I ran out, not looking back. I reached my apartment and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. I managed to unlock the door and slipped inside, locking it behind me. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath. It was over, I told myself. The clown couldn't get in. I was safe. But then I heard a noise, a faint shuffling sound, coming from the closet. My heart sank. He was still there. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hands trembling. I had to be ready. I had to protect myself. The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. I listened, straining to hear any sound. The silence was oppressive, filled with unspoken threats. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the closet door opening. My heart raced as I tightened my grip on the knife. I moved to the living room, my eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The door to the closet was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the room. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my nerves on edge. As I approached the door, it swung open, revealing the clown. His face was twisted with rage, his eyes wild with madness. He lunged at me, and I swung the knife, but he knocked it out of my hand. We struggled, his grip like iron. He forced me back, pinning me against the wall. "You can't escape," he hissed, his breath hot against my skin. I kicked and punched, trying to break free, but he was relentless. He threw me to the ground, and I scrambled to my feet, running towards the living room. I needed a weapon, something to defend myself. I reached the living room and froze. 4 more clowns were waiting for me, their faces painted with grotesque smiles. They moved towards me, their laughter filling the room. I backed away, my mind racing with fear and confusion. They surrounded me, their movements slow and deliberate. They danced around me, their laughter growing louder and more manic. I felt my knees buckle, the terror overwhelming me. The room started to spin, and I felt myself falling. When I woke up, I was in my bed. The room was silent, the morning light filtering through the curtains. I sat up, my heart still pounding. Was it a dream? I looked around, but there was no sign of the clowns. The apartment was quiet, just as I had left it. I got out of bed, my body aching from the previous night's ordeal. I checked the closet, but there was no sign of the clown. Was it all just a nightmare? I couldn't shake the feeling of unease as I went about my day. The images of the clowns haunted me, their laughter echoing in my mind. I tried to convince myself that it was all just a dream, but the fear lingered. The police were no help. They dismissed my story as a bad dream, perhaps brought on by too much drink at the party. There was no evidence of an intruder, they said. I knew better. I had seen them, felt their hands on me. I had to find out the truth. I threw myself into investigating the attack, desperate for answers. I scoured the internet for any reports of clown sightings or attacks, but came up empty. I spoke to Jennifer and the other partygoers, but no one had seen anything unusual. The trail was cold, and my search led nowhere. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the faint sound of laughter, and I wonder, were they really there, or was it just a dream? The uncertainty is the worst part, the not knowing, the fear that they might return. And in those moments, I remember the terror of that night. The clowns' twisted smiles, their maniacal laughter, and the sense of being hunted. I remind myself to lock the doors, to stay vigilant, because whether it was a dream or reality, the fear was all too real.